Good afternoon and welcome to this latest in our successful BARA webinar series. Today we're going to be discussing why automate, why bother, why do it, why don't do something else. We've assembled a great panel for you, which I'll introduce to you in a moment. But first of all, I'm going to go quickly through our housekeeping rules, which I think will appear magically on the screen any moment. She says, hopefully, yay, I knew it would work. Just to make you aware that we are recording this session. So if you get to a point that's really interesting, you think, oh, I missed some of that, it will be on the BARA website afterwards for you to catch up on. All of our attendees' mics have been set to mute by default, and when they're ready to speak, we're all hoping they're going to unmute themselves so we can hear them. If I do this, that means they haven't done that. It's not that I'm having a moment. We do encourage you to ask us questions. So if you just type them in, I will be monitoring them throughout and we'll either bring them in during the discussion or at the end. We also ask you not to post website URLs or company promotion in the chat box, as you'll be kicked out of the webinar apparently, which we've not had yet, but there's always a first. Chatham House rules apply. So as I say, you will be able to see this at the end on the bara.org.uk website. If you could wait to the end and give us a short feedback on the little form, that would really be great, because then we can tailor these sessions for the future to the benefit of all. So we hope you like this afternoon. Thank you for that. I'm now going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. So firstly, I'm going to go to Neil Turnbull.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Neil Turnbull. I work for Schmaltz UK. We're a vacuum manufacturer equipment provider into the robotics and industry. We deal predominantly within the end of arm tooling for the robots to provide vacuum pick and place systems and full palletizers. So yeah, I'm the UK sales director, so I'm interested to see any questions and how we can further progress this great opportunity within the UK manufacturing industry.
Thanks, Neil. I'm now moving on to Dermot Lynch.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here at my first ever BARA meeting. I am the General Manager for ABB Robotics in the UK and Ireland. So for those who don't know, ABB Robotics provide a full range of industrial robots, collaborative robots, autonomous mobile robots, and also digital solutions as well. Prior to my current role, I was head of business development for the ABB Group in UK and Ireland. And yeah, very pleased to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Moving on to George Thompson.
Hello, George Thompson. I am currently the chairman of BARA, and for my day job, I am sales manager for Google UK. So we provide linear robot solutions. I have also worked for the majority of other robot manufacturers and have been in the robotics and automation industry for about 25 years now. So,
excellent. Thank you. Oliver Selby.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Oliver Selby. I'm currently head of sales at Fanuc UK. Fanuc are a provider of CNC solutions, robot solutions, a very wide range of robots, and other automation solutions similar to ABB. We offer a huge range of solutions for different manufacturing types, different industries, different applications across the UK and Ireland.
Lovely, thanks. I think you'll agree we've assembled an excellent panel for you, which are going to, I'm sure, really inform you about what's going on at the moment. So we're going to start off with the absolute basic question: what are the benefits of automation? And I'm going to start there with Oliver.
Well, for me, the main benefit is that we can be more productive, more efficient in our current manufacturing, and get to a point where we can compete with the global manufacturers that we do compete with, and they are global, not just European. They are global manufacturing entities that we do compete with. Automation offers itself as a way forward for us to become, say, more productive, more efficient through various means. That might be increasing cycle time, decreasing cycle time, manufacturing more parts, manufacturing with higher quality, amongst other things. In the UK, we sit currently 25th in the world in terms of robot adoption. It's measured by the International Federation of Robotics. Per 10,000 manufacturing workers, we sit 25th, as I say. However, we do sit in the top 10 of manufacturing nations globally for manufacturing output. Now, 8 of those other top 10 manufacturers globally have higher robot adoption rates than ourselves. So for us to keep up with them, they're benefiting from that increase in productivity already. For us to keep up with them and maintain our position within the top 10, I think we need to increase our adoption of robotics, certainly, and automation to try and maintain our position there in the top 10.
Lovely, thank you. George, you wanted to say something, I think, on this?
Yes, I agree with everything that Oliver has just said, but also there are some sustainability and health and safety issues that can also be addressed by adopting automation. When you look at the health and safety executive guidelines for manual handling, one of the very first questions that is asked when you're doing your risk assessment is, do you have to move it? And if you do, can it be automated? And most people, I think, either ignore that bit or don't understand the importance of that part of the legislation. With regards to sustainability, and Gail, you and I have spoken on this several times, as you know, one of the things that I think that we should be doing as a nation is, instead of longshoring everything, we should nearshore or reshore our manufacturing. And this is, of course, to reduce the amount of transit we have on the high seas. And it doesn't matter which corner of the globe you go to, if it's being transported on the high seas, then that can't be good for anybody. All you need is one captain to park his boat the wrong way around the Suez Canal and the whole world falls apart, right?
I think certainly after COVID, with all the supply chain issues, probably reshoring is a very good idea. Neil, what would you like to say on this? I think you were talking about energy.
I knew that'd be the first one to do that, so I do apologise.
You get the prize, Neil. You get the prize.
I mean, again, similar to Oliver and Dermot and George, and I think it's a common theme. Energy efficiency, that the rise in costs and the increase in production costs is really quite paramount at the moment for every single manufacturing company. And it's how do we approach this to try and support the UK economy, to say, right, okay, we've got this potential issue. It's not just ourselves, it's throughout the world. But so how are we looking to address this? And I think we've got a superb opportunity. I really do, with the technology that's available. Again, to reduce down energy costs, but also, I know we're going to go on to labour costs later on this discussion, but the manufacturing costs are going through the roof, and unless we take a fresh approach and say, right, how do we harness automation? How do we harness the robotics capability to protect our manufacturing facilities within the UK? It's not all about just driving down costs. It's actually, how do we become more competitive and increase our production rates? And it's I've worked within, similar to what George said, I've worked within the automation industry for 20-25 years, and I think we've all seen the increase of technology that's being used. And one of the last ranges of products to be used in the industry is robots. I mean, the automotive industry have harnessed robots for a very, very long time, because they are in such a competitive marketplace. I think we need to make some bold steps and look at this with a fresh approach and say, right, how do we do this?
Yeah,
good. We must move forward on this opportunity.
I mean, certainly in 2023, at the end of 2023, people shouldn't be lifting heavy boxes for 8 hours a day anymore, should they?
No.
They really shouldn't. Dermot, do you want to come in on this, or can I talk to you about what the barriers might be, or what you as a panel believe, or yourself believe are the barriers to why people don't adopt automation more readily?
Yeah, no, just briefly to recap on everything we've heard so far, there's clearly a big basket of benefits, and we covered almost everything that a manufacturer would want to impact. And I think one of the challenges we have is making sure all those things are captured in business cases when we're putting forward proposals for investments in technology. In terms of the barriers, I mean, ABB, we're a founder member of the Made Smarter Commission, which people might be familiar with, set up in 2017 to look at exactly that question. You know, what are the barriers to automation? Because it's a long-standing issue, you know, going back probably to the 1970s, but it got particularly acute, I think, since 2008. And, 3 reasons they came up with at the time in the 2017 report, where we lack a programmatic industrial strategy, we have a quite confused incentivization landscape, and also at the time there was a perception that there was a lack of exemplars. There weren't places people could go and see and touch and feel, you know, what the benefits were. I think probably against all those points, we've made really significant progress. But if you look at, I think, the countries that are ahead of us, one of the main things I look to is a lack of greenfield investment, right? So anytime you build a new factory, it's going to come equipped with the latest technologies, and therefore those benefits kind of come baked in with that. So so these last 2 weeks, I think, you know, we've seen a hat trick of things, I think, for UK manufacturing, in terms of an extra 4.5 billion commitment from the government. We're going to extend that Made Smarter work nationally, which is great. And then obviously the good news yesterday in terms of full expensing capital allowances. So I think a lot of the excuses now will be taken off the table, and it's down to us to make it a reality in the next year.
Sure. I mean, certainly the autumn statement was on the face of it, seems very good news. Do you agree, Oliver?
Absolutely, yeah. So that fully expensing sort of model for businesses of all sizes will have an effect. Where I was going to go with the conversation was around, obviously, one of the other barriers that I find in finding the right people. The labour, say, skills shortage as it is at the moment, doesn't just affect those businesses, those end users that are manufacturing right now. It's also affecting us as equipment suppliers, and those companies we work with who will actually deliver automation solutions, deliver the adoption of automation to the UK manufacturing landscape. So what we do see is that say apprentices are being developed by various companies with robotics and automation at a core, as a core there. The likes of Amazon, the likes of some of the other big manufacturers, the big warehousing type companies are looking at developing those apprentices with robotics and automation as a key skill, a core skill, if you like. And I'd say us as a manufacturer of that equipment are also working with those educational establishments to make sure we've got the right knowledge, the right employable skills being delivered at that sort of young age, if you like, so that we've got the right workforce for the future.
I agree. There was a point made actually by none other than the PPMA chairman last month, where he was talking about upskilling your current workforce. You know, isn't that, you can't wait for the kids to come out of school, can you? You know, do you think there's a barrier to upskilling the current workforces?
I think it comes down to commitment. I think we don't necessarily see from UK manufacturers the same commitment that say our European or global competition are making in terms of upskilling their current workforce, introducing and adopting robotics at the same rate, you know, as those would need those people to be upskilled. You know, people don't necessarily get replaced within companies when automation takes over. They are reskilled. They're retooled with the skills they need to actually run that automation or maintain that automation. You know, that's very, very typical, and very, very few case studies come to light that actually people actually lose their jobs because automation is put in place.
Yeah. And also, do you think that's more rewarding work, George, that actually people who, you know, the Xbox generation, for example, surely they would be much happier programming a robot than, you know, wiping some oil off something. I'm just trying making this up, you know, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I understand where you're going with it. I've done quite a bit with STEM, and a few years ago, I took a little educational robot around a couple of high schools, and you could see the individuals, even at high school age, who had the aptitude for programming robots. And you can teach anyone to point and shoot on a teach pen. It's not rocket science, but there's a big difference between someone who can program a robot and a robot programmer. A robot programmer will look steps and steps ahead. It's a little bit like playing chess. You know, you can very easily, if you're not paying attention to what you need to do next, to get yourself in a little bit of a pickle. And you have to take into account things like your umbilical that goes down to the end effector. When it's running at full speed, is that going to fall on one side of the robot arm or the other side of the robot arm? And those are the skills that the experienced robot programmers will know. And of course, those are things that can be taught. And especially now with the simulation tools that are available, they can actually simulate which way that's going to go as part of the package. And it takes a lot of the trial and error and guesswork out of doing the programming.
Sure.
It makes life a lot easier.
Do you, Neil, have you got anything to say to barriers in terms of your end effectors and things? Do you think, what's your view on it?
Again, similar to what George has just mentioned, I mean, at Schmaltz, we have a sizing program that we work with customers and, you know, machine builders, system integrators to ensure that the equipment's sized correctly. Because something that's maybe has been missed in years gone by, that, you know, again, going back to the productivity and the efficiency of the equipment, that it's actually sized correctly. But I think now that working with full system integrators for full machine controls, whether or not it's, you know, pneumatic equipment, the vacuum equipment, the robots, vision systems, everything can be actually tied in together now. And again, it's you know, the challenges that companies or barriers see, that it's the supplier identification of saying, right, who can support or who can supply full equipment solutions like that. The technology now in this day and age is staggering. And I think, you know, from everybody's on this forum here, it's the products that are available in the marketplace, the investment, so I would say significantly over the last 10 to 15 years, are really driving technology forward. So it needs to break down the barriers, you know, the knowledge or progression of the industry. And again, the perception of costs. It's, I mean, we all work with manufacturing companies, and you say, oh, well, how much is that system is going to cost us to implement? And it's not always how much it's going to cost to implement. It's how much it's actually going to save and increase your productivity. You know, you've got to marry them both up. It's but again, it's that mindset of the reluctance to maybe look at automation, to look at future-proofing your machines, to say, right, okay, no, it's not the cost, it's how much you're going to save, the return of investment in year 1, year 2, year 3. And again, with the labour costs, with everything like that, energy costs, it's the payback. I mean, I think we all work within the manufacturing industry, and we do the cost of return on investment, and some of the paybacks I've been looking at 6 months.
Yeah,
it's the long life of, I mean, I don't want to go into the products of why Schmaltz and what we do at our company, but we want to ensure the products that we're putting in the marketplace last as long as possible that they can, because it's, you know, if you're providing a quality service, a quality product, people are going to say, we need to go with them guys. And that's the industry that we work in now. And I know I'm not just speaking for myself. I know all reputable manufacturers, what we've got around this table now, are in exactly the same boat.
Yeah. Oliver, did you want to come in?
Yeah, all I was going to say was that on that, I think that the industry has changed over the past 5 to 10 years, in that regardless of whether you go to a robot supplier, equipment supplier, or an equipment end-of-arm tool supplier like what Neil's offering there, it's a consultative sales approach that we all take. We all know a little bit about everyone else's products, enough that we can actually bring to the end user, the user of that equipment, a solution. You know, we may not have all the answers, but we know enough to make a fair judgment in front of the customer sat opposite him across the table to say, well, actually, the right route is this, or a route you should investigate is this. You know, that's I think hopefully everyone would agree that actually that consultative sales approach does de-risk it somewhat for the user and speeds the process up. The other thing I was going to mention there about sort of on what Neil was saying about the return on investment calculations, yes, they can be done. Typically in the UK, we see most companies either being driven by, say, purchasing to try and reduce their return on investment or the payback, as we think of it, to less than 2 years. You know, across the rest of Europe, globally, some of those companies are pushing out to 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 years. You know, that return on investment, which means it's easier for them to actually get agreement from the board, the people who are going to pay for it on those bigger investments, making automation adoption easier. You know, one of the things that we work on at FANUC is obviously, rather than looking at the ROI, is to look at the total cost of the equipment, the total cost of ownership. Because if you start looking at that, it's a much easier calculation. It's easy to show that automation does pay off in the longer term.
Okay, so Dermot, I'll come to you. Do you think people need to have, I think I'm pitching this from one of our panel members from our earlier discussion, they have to have courage and a bit of ambition?
Yeah, courage, ambition, but equally, you know, we think the investment stands up on its own, as Oliver suggested. You know, it's not an emotional decision to make an investment, and we do have to engage in that kind of consultative based approach. But we do generally find that it's much easier to sell the second robot than the first, right? So once you've familiarized yourself and overcome those initial hurdles and barriers, you know, there is definitely a pull through there. But I would echo, I think, what Oliver said in terms of looking at that total cost of ownership, and maybe having a completely different scorecard for assessing. So, you know, we talked about sustainability. Our next generation robot controller will save 20% on energy and did before. You put that into you know, a cost multiplier basis, and you know, it completely changes the game. So yeah, it's having the courage, as I said, going back to the you know, the barriers we talked about. One thing that has significantly changed since 2017 is the fact that there are plenty more avenues for people to come and get hands on and try it and prove it for themselves before they have to make any significant investment.
Okay. Would you advise people then, there's a barrier that people should take almost like baby steps, not just to go to, you know, from no robots or no automation to lights out? You know, that is a scary journey, isn't it? If they just start small and prove itself and then move on. And so the engineers are being able to prove it to the board that this bit worked, so they're going to go on or whatever. Is that an approach that could work, George, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, when someone says that to me that they want to go lights out, I usually try to rein them back and say, oh, okay, I understand where your end goal. Let's start with something easy, not just because we know how to do it and we know that it's been done, but so you as a new automation user get the confidence with the fact that this is going to do what we say it's going to do. It does do what it says on the tin. And I usually try to steer them toward end of line, because that is something that is going to give in a lot of cases, the biggest payback the quickest, because it reduces the manual handling, it reduces. And once you start showing people that there's more to life than stacking boxes on pallets or putting products into boxes, and God forbid somebody is making up boxes. We have the technology to do all of these things quite simply and very cost effectively. And it doesn't matter whether you're using a collaborative robot or an articulated robot or a SCARA or any of the other types. You know, there is a solution and there's a place for everything.
Sure. Okay, I'm just going to bring in a question we've had through from one of our viewers, which is, how do you get beyond the cost argument and ensure that there's a mutual understanding between the factory floor and the boardroom? Would anyone like to come in on that at all?
Yeah. I can certainly have a go. So I think for me, it's around education around robot adoption. The benefits of automation don't start at the very bottom. They don't start just at the very top. They have to be across the whole board. You know, the benefits of automation and say getting a tie-in between the factory floor, the benefits it will bring to the shop floor worker, and the benefits it will bring to a business are a slightly different classroom lesson. Yeah, different theory, but they have to be both done at the same time to get buy-in across that business. That automation will make the difference. So it's an education piece for me.
Okay. So I'm sitting there, I've got my factory, I'm thinking, oh, I really need to do this more efficiently. Should I go to a robot manufacturer, or should I try and find the elusive robot integrator, and or can both help each other? You were talking about the sort of consultative cell. I'm sure that helps in that area. What do you think, Neil, in terms of if people come to you on this case?
I mean, we get an awful lot of inquiries on that basis. With the alliance partnerships that are available again throughout the UK with system integrators, if you go direct to ourselves or to a robot manufacturer, we have system integrators that are reputable, that we've worked with, that have fully upskilled their workforce, that can design the exact solution. We've got complete supply confidence into them. Again, on that question, which was a very valid question from the chat, was, again, one of the key factors that we try and propose is we'll present a solution, but also test the facility. You know, you don't have to say, oh, there's X amount of thousands of pounds and we hope it works. A lot of the test facilities that are available in the UK, we've got one in Manchester in our head office. I know that the ABB guys and FANUC have got the same. Customers, or the potential customers, can actually go to these sites to see working case applications and history. You know, and it's saying, right, how do you do that? How do you propose? I mean, and I'll say it's, and I haven't been paid to say this, but these guys are like top level. These guys are top level engineers, and it's the experience they've got in the fields. It's not new to them. You know, the experience that they've got is staggering. So the supplier confidence must be able to say, right, okay, let's engage with ABB or FANUC or ourselves. How do you actually do that? How do we do this? I mean, our test facility, I'm not going to say vacuum's like a dark art, but sometimes we get sent a box or a product to say, can you lift this? And we actually trial it. And we take a video and send it back and say, yes, this is how we would propose to do it, to ensure we're getting the correct energy efficiency, we're sizing it correctly, you know, we're ticking all the boxes. So the supplier confidence, and that's not just the guys from the shop floor, that's also to the boardroom, to the stakeholders, to the accountants of the world. So we can facilitate that level of inquiry to say, right, okay, we're going to offer you the full solution. But I think just, you know, the engagement with each customer, it's or supplier, you know, again, Oliver, Dermot, you know, these guys are really top notch, you know, manufacturers of equipment solutions, and with their experience, there shouldn't be any, you know, we welcome people, and I don't like the levels. I don't like split levels, like, oh, people on the shop floor and people in the boardroom. No, they're all one level for ourselves, and say, right, come to us and we'll show you how we do things, how we side things, make sure the equipment's correctly for your application, and propose the solution.
Thank you. Moving on to costs of it. We've talked about whether it's cost effective or whatever, but actually the challenge of writing that check for, well, obviously now, thanks to Jeremy Hunt, it's going to be much easier, obviously, but when they come to write that check, you know, we're talking now about the options available as people are getting more flexible in terms of leasing or pay as you use or finance. And I think, Dermot, you were going to talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah, well, first, I think going back to that, you know, capital allowances, full expensing, we as technology companies don't offer financial advice. I would say that first and foremost, but I think really there's so all these incentives exist, right? We've got what we want in terms of asking for them to exist. I think there is an education piece there, because I do speak to a lot of manufacturers who maybe aren't even aware of what they could be claiming to support these investment decisions. So that's maybe just a general statement for industry and everyone else. In terms of then where we look at financing models, obviously generally financing has become more difficult in the past years as we've seen interest rates go up and things like that. There is huge interest in leasing, and we have engaged in small bits of it in the past. I have a background outside of automation that involved working in leased assets, and there's a couple of big challenges. One is, you know, you have to find someone's balance sheet for the asset to sit on. There are specialist financing companies that do that. And the second thing is that the solutions and products tend to need to be quite standardized in terms of management. But as companies like ourselves and FANUC and others introduce more connected type services, that will give confidence in terms of the health of the asset as it's out there. But, you know, particularly in areas I think where we see a lot of seasonality, it makes sense, and there's a demand for it, which means we basically have a market failure, which I think will be plugged over time, because there's value to be captured there if anyone can come up with a solution to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can follow on from that actually. So I think from our other parts of the business, we see that, say, the machine tool industry, the injection molding machines, the vertical machining tool, they're all pretty much 90% plus are financed. Yeah, because you've got an asset there that's got a residual value for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. So it's easy to then, for a finance company to say, okay, there's a residual value, it's got a lifetime, it can be used in that manufacturer, that manufacturer, that manufacturer. It's easy. With robot and automation solutions that generally have been developed as bespoke solutions, it's a bit more difficult to sort of see what that residual value looks like. But things are changing, as Dermot mentions. If you can see standard solutions, a standard solution would much easier lend itself to a financing, a rental type opportunity. We see that currently with one of our customers who's managed to get investment for some renter robots in palletizing applications, and whether a robot is picking up a box of tea or a box of car parts, or it's a box of something that's going on a pallet end of the day. So it could have that that value in either of those different manufacturing facilities, and it has a residual value. So they've managed to get some investment for their business, rent a robot, which is quite nice. And I think it will come more and more that we will see rented solutions out in the marketplace. It makes it a lot easier potentially on the balance sheet because you're not necessarily seeing an asset that you're depreciating over time or having to pay for up front, you know. So I think as an overhead to the business, it's a little bit easier to swallow.
Sure. Anyone else want to talk about leasing or financing, or George or Neil, or no? Let's move on. I'm just thinking about the fact, you know, sitting there, I don't know who's obviously industries that people watching are, but what would you say the four of you are the easiest parts of a line to automate? If you're in a factory, we've talked about end of line. Is that kind of the simplest? I mean, they can, you know, or are there other parts that you think, well, actually, traditional machines, obviously with pick and place, there are robots in more places than you think, aren't there? Really, we're not just talking about a great big robot in the corner or whatever. There's lots of technologies that use robots. But are there areas that you think, oh, really, this part of the industry, they could really, really progress if they adopted more robots? Am I just barking up the wrong tree here, or? I'm seeing. Oh, George is in.
I can
Well
have
done,
I
George.
can have a go at this
Rescued
one.
me. Go on.
Yes, I think it is. Most people would be very surprised at some of the applications that there are robotic technologies in, regardless of what that technology is. From a Goodell's perspective, we have everything from biomedical sciences right the way down to handling nuclear fuel rods and just about everything in between. One of the advantages of having an area gantry is we have a much larger working envelope that we can accomplish. So, for example, doing order picking in a warehouse, instead of using a mobile robot to do that, we can also use a staging gantry to do that, where we're picking up individual totes or boxes or whatever. And that's just one example. And I think people would be astonished at some of the temperature swings that all sorts of automation can tolerate. And that can go from deep freeze environments, and with an articulated robot, yes, you need to protect the robot for that. And then you've got the other side in foundry applications. So again, you still need to protect the mechanics of the robot for that and the electronics. But we do have, and all of us have installed automation into those applications on a regular basis. And if people could only see what we get to see, what we have the opportunity to see, they would think twice. And I think that's a lot of the problem with some of the adoption in some of the industries that aren't well adopted, if you like, in automation, is they don't know what's possible.
Yeah.
You know, they've just traditionally thrown people at the problem instead of looking at it the way that automotive or aerospace does. You know, when you're looking at a new car model, every panel is, okay, how are we going to handle this with a robot? How are we going to do this? How are we going to assemble it? Instead of, okay, well, we've got this product, we need to wrap it, and then we need to throw it in a box, and then we need to put the box on a pallet and then wrap it and send it out. You know, that's the mentality that all industry sectors need to adopt. And there's a lot that every industry sector can learn from the other, which is what at BARA we term cross-pollination.
Yeah. Well, now that there are less people available, maybe do you think that is going to encourage adoption more when you are not only not being able to get any workers of any level of skills?
That's the most common inquiry that we currently get is, you know, again, going back 5 or 6 years, it was, we would like to take people out of this particular application. We need to use them somewhere else in the facility. And now it's, I can't get people to pack the boxes. How do I pack the boxes? I need a
really
solution.
good example of that would be case or shelf-ready packaging. You know, you've got these boxes that are able to be rip the top off and throw it on the shelf.
Yeah.
You haven't got to unpack the box anymore. You know, it's made it a nightmare for automation companies because you end up with loose lid boxes, you end up with perforated boxes, and you can't necessarily pick them up using traditional methods like Neil offers with a vacuum because they are so porous or have got the wrong design. I think we have to sort of take a step backwards sometimes and actually sort of point people towards designing for automation, you know, because that's where the cost saving potentially is, rather than actually the fact that they don't have to unpack the box at the supermarket, or there's a way of doing both, you know. So I think we have to try and sometimes look at that in the right way. Yeah.
Let's move on to the future before I come to the questions, and I will come to these questions. Don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. We're talking about future technology. What's next? We talked about cobots and mobile robots. So I think, who would like to talk about cobots for a start? Dermot, yes, so you do.
Well, maybe more just on AMRs generally. I think maybe one of the others can touch specifically on cobots, but yeah, I think, you know, autonomous mobile robots, from what we're seeing at the market end of this, is not going to be a standard deployment curve as we've seen maybe in some of the other innovations that have been introduced over the years. So we're not going to go from, I think, where we are today on a gradual slope of adoption, it's going to be significant, and it's going to be very widespread and ubiquitous very quickly. And I think that will create some challenges as well as opportunities. But the good news is, I think in the UK, I mean, within ABB, the UK is a prioritized market for autonomous mobile robotics. So I think it's a good example actually where maybe finally the UK is actually ahead of some other countries in terms of adoption, early adoption at least. And what that's going to do is basically just layer a whole other level of value on top of the wide value case we already talked about. So we think you can get, like, at a system level, probably another 20% efficiency by adding AMRs, and not always just adding them on the supply side, but sometimes, as I think others have suggested, if you just redesign your entire process around the AMR, you'll get massive added value. But beyond that, now we're also seeing we're starting to package artificial intelligence into applications and standardize those. So, AI picking applications, again, you would have seen demonstrations of those things in the past. They're now becoming saleable products that we can offer to customers directly. And then final one for me is the evolution of our simulation tools. What started out as basically design tools are now becoming, we're integrating data that we're drawing from the systems back into the design tools, creating basically digital twins. And then when you kind of combine all those things together and get more user-friendly interfaces over the top, it actually becomes easier, even though it sounds like we're adding complexity. This will all, for the end user, I think, simplify things a lot more in the future. So yeah, exciting time, I think.
I was going to say, because I'm sitting here now thinking, right, if they haven't adopted the basic, how's everyone, once you get all this layer of new tech on it, is that not going to put people, is that going to excite people, or is it a harder sell? Or
okay, yeah. Obviously, people are in different places in the maturity curve, but I actually think it's probably easier to enter at that level than maybe have to go back and redesign stuff that has been gradually put in over the years. So I actually think all of this will eventually be geared towards helping those who've actually maybe done less in the past, right, and don't necessarily have to rework. As I said, for example, introducing AMRs into existing processes and layouts is different from reimagining the whole process. So no, ultimately, when I look at some of the tools we have now, what I'm seeing is becoming they're actually becoming less and less complex, and removing, maybe bypassing some of the need for some of those hard skills that have been important up to that point.
Okay, I think Oliver, you wanted to talk about the safety of cobots, because obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think following on from what Dermot said, there is obviously those one hard skill that will remain is obviously managing the safety of an automated solution within a production environment, making sure that we can meet the machinery directive, and making sure we've got a technical file that allows you to do your CE marking or your UKCA marking, or which then leads on to your PUR assessment as an end user, the provision and use of work equipment. So I think it's important that whoever you go to either install or purchase an automated solution, whether that's robotic or something else, they've got the necessary skills. They provide the necessary information around the risk assessment methodology that meets the machinery directive, which is obviously then linked to the ISO standards and the technical specifications around sort of cobot usage, if that's something you're using, and making sure they provide the right information in that technical file for you to then have that fully rounded view on safety. It's imperative that we do follow that, because what you don't want to see is more and more cases in social media, the press, that robots harmed a worker or worse, and especially not in the UK, where we've got such a good record on health and safety in manufacturing. So I think it's imperative we maintain our safety standards and get things fully checked, and understand the equipment that we're delivering and installing in the right way, and make sure it meets those safety requirements.
It's tricky though, isn't it? When it's like when you, I don't know, buy anything, you buy a kitchen, you buy something, and then you think they're going to be great, and it's like, oh God, they were absolute cowboys or whatever. How do is it? That's when I come back to, is a manufacturer or an integrator, or I'm sitting there, I don't know where to start. Maybe they could go to BARA for some independent advice, or the PPMA group, or whatever. As a trade association, this is something that the trade association can apply. This is just the advertising break, just for the people on the.
That's
on
certainly
the-
possible.
on the thing.
Absolutely. The other thing would be to sort of question, with some detail, the integrator or the equipment suppliers' view on safety. How do they want to manage you as a customer in regards you installing that equipment, or you purchasing that equipment from them, in terms of the safety? A lot of them will go to independent safety consultants to provide that kind of risk assessment, and that would be one good way and one top tip for me to ensure that you do install some equipment safely, is go to an independent safety consultant, or use them as a consultancy service on how you should manage that. They would typically be TUV certified safety, machinery safety experts, and so they've got some document, a certificate somewhere tucked in their back pocket that says they are the experts.
I think that's sound advice, actually. I think, has anyone else got anything to say about new stuff and whatever? Neil, I don't know whether I know you develop bespoke stuff all the time.
Yeah, I mean, again, similar to what Dermot mentioned about the AMRs, we're focusing on more of a product solution for that industry. So they're not relying on anything complex, and we've developed a range of products that support that industry, to make it easy that they can, if they need to be a pickup of a box, it's the self-generated vacuum. You don't have to have a vacuum generator itself, and it's more the product, but we sort of like sit more of enhancing that product focus. It's a huge huge opportunity again for the payback and making us competitive. But I think Dermot said, well, I know Oliver mentioned, we've got to take one step at a time. Is this the right move for lights out production facilities, well, not production facilities, but logistic facilities? But there's a lot of products and capabilities around that subject. We invest an awful lot, as every other company, to make us competitive for that marketplace. It is coming. There's huge productivity and cost or return on investments for that. So it's the house. So there's a lot of really interesting products available for that.
Thank you. I'm going to move on, I think, to some of the questions that we've had sent in. I like this one, that the food production is a critical industry. It affects us all. It is heavy on labour requirement, and automation of primary processing is not as advanced as other industries, which I think we'd all agree with. So how do you see automation developing for the food industry in particular? I don't know if anyone would like to take that.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, one of the things I think probably has got to change is the way in which, say, contracts are subcontracted out to the major manufacturers. And we work with a number of manufacturers who make a variety of kind of brand name products, but they typically might only have quite short contracts to manufacture those particular products, whether that's sort of shelf ready type things, meats, that sort of thing, or pies or pots of whatever it may be. They only have short-term contracts. The issue we see is that obviously to then automate a production line on the back of a short-term contract being awarded, it's quite tricky to sort of evaluate where the ROI is going to come and how quickly it will come. And the investment that's obviously agreed to is only necessarily put in place for the length of that contract. If that contract is only 2 years, it limits that company to say, well, we need to pay it back in 2 years or less, because we've only got a 2-year contract with the main primary supplier of that of product. So I think a change is needed there in terms of some longer term contracts being awarded to make it easier to then obviously automate, to reduce costs, to then pass it on. That for me is one key thing. And I think the other thing is that a lot of the manufacturers, like us and ABB, are coming to market with actually more food specific products. Same with Neil, I'm sure. We have a range of food grade robots, a range of food grade gripping solutions that are suitable for primary foods, as we call it. So picking raw food, raw product, easy to clean, easy to interchange with clean solutions if they're on a time-based changeover. There are ways in which we can obviously manage that. They exist already. It's obviously making sure we actually apply them in the right scenario.
Okay. Anyone else want to? Neil,
I think
yeah.
again on that basis for the food industry, we work with a lot of system integrators and machine builders. A lot of the products that are available in that marketplace, it's obviously high speed. As Oliver said, it's flexibility. They do certain runs of, we're coming towards Christmas now. They'll be selling mince pies and turkeys or whatever. Then next year might be they're doing the summer runs of prawns or salads and things like that. So the adaptability. So again, harnessing that industry focus, it's not making it too complex to say, right, okay, what do you need? What do you need this machine to do? It's high speed. Again, FDA approval for washdown applications, but flexibility. Again, it's not going into specifics, but we've got a match system. So if you want to do a mechanical gripper or a vacuum gripper, there's several different flexibility options that you can provide into the machine. So you're not just buying one machine to do one product. Again, it's all the food manufacturing industry is very, very high speed, and there's an awful lot of challenges about that. But again, all the main manufacturers bring out FDA approved equipment, again, programmable controllers. But the flexibility, for me, it's the flexibility, but also the system integrators or the machine builders, again, within the UK market. But there's a lot of companies that you have to think outside the box, pardon the pun. You can't just go to a company and say, all right, you want to pick up that sausage roll, or you want to pick up that, I don't know, Brussels sprout or tomato or whatever it is. How do we actually do this? What are your production runs? How are you going to future proof this? So yeah, there's a big focus. But again, the food industry, it should maybe harness more on automation. I mean, I know you mentioned on the previous discussion about the end of line. The end of line is the simplest application for palletizers for packaging of the materials. I've recently been to a site where there was, and you mentioned about the packing 20 kilogram boxes. Well, it was between 15 and 20 kilogram boxes of a weight. No, I'm quite a big guy, and I can lift 20 kilograms. I couldn't lift 20 kilograms all day. And I actually said to them, it says we've got, in Schmaltz we have different layers of products. So we have like a semi-automatic system that we could actually do a vacuum lifter to manually pick it. I says, but if you want just a simple vision system to see when the box comes off, put it on the pallet and send the pallet to the palletizer, your return on investment will probably be a year. Yeah. It's as simple as that, and I says there's companies that'll, do this day in, day out.
Yeah.
It's the food industry it's a hard industry because again, it's I was watching something last night on the Simon Reeves or the productivity or the stresses that the market, the supermarkets put on these companies. They want it for cheap as possible, they want it quick as possible, and they want it tomorrow. How are they going to do that? So unless we harness everything that we're talking about now, people are going to struggle, and you'll go through employees and like say 20 kilogram boxes. You think, oh yeah, I can easily lift that. You can't lift that for 8 hours.
No, that's true. That's excellent. Dermot, what did you want to say?
Yeah, no, obviously everything Oliver and Neil said absolutely true. I think even in spite of the challenges that are there, I think it's the fastest growing sector of robotic adoption in the UK, double-digit growth the last couple of years. So as I said before, getting that first robot in there is what will eventually have people turn around and look at them. We also see a big uptake of AMRs there as well for the processing side. So that there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to be had in spite of the challenges there.
Okay, well, I like this. Now, there's one question here that I think we just need to get in touch with the PPMA, which is we have 20 people assembling and packing electrical products. How do we get advice on which parts of the process can be effectively robotized? I'm clueless on automation so far. Well, I mean, you've got, look at them here. They're smiling now, these people.
We'll all jump at that now.
So they'll all take this sales lead, I'm sure. So if you could make a note of 0208 773 8111, someone will answer your call and ask for Lizelle, and she'll be able to put you through to our panel directly later.
Gail, I think it's also worth mentioning at that point that there is a lot of information on the BARA website about how to specify automation, how to get in touch with our members. And of course, we also do have the System Integrator Certification Scheme. So for those who aren't aware what that is, we have paired up with A3, which is our sister organization in the United States. And we have set up a series of tests and challenges for system integrators to follow. And as long as they can adhere to those very strict standards, then they can become a certified integrator. It's not a one and done. So every other year, they have to go through the same process again and be reevaluated. So again, if you're new to robotics and you're new to automation, go through our list, see who our integrators are, and if you can't see anyone that you think would fit the bill on that list, then start going through the members of BARA list, and I'm sure that one of us will pop up somewhere.
And remember who's been on the panel, so you'll be fine there. Okay.
The only thing I was going to add there was that actually most of us will actually go through and do a factory line walk and actually do an audit of most customers' sites so that we actually fully understand what the low-hanging fruit opportunities may be, what the further to reach opportunities may be, because it may be that a customer's view of where the low-hanging fruit may be might be completely different to one of us who have got some experience. So I think it's important that you do get people in who are experts rather than just assume that the end of line is the easy bit, because that's not always the case. There are other ways to obviously automate. There are lots of other applications that you can automate, a very varied, diverse range of applications. Again, will be shown on the BARA website, so worth looking.
Okay, brilliant. I think we've got
sorry, just to interject again. Sorry, to follow on what Oliver was saying. A lot of what an end customer will think that is their problem area, when we come in and look at it with a fresh set of eyes, it's usually not what they think it is. It's usually one process further down or one process further upstream. It's either oversaturated because something down the line isn't working the way it should, or it's starving a product because something up the line isn't working the way it should.
That's a good point, George. Thank you. I think we've got room 2 minutes we've got left, so this is going to be a quick fire, and I love this. Is there a reliable measure for the UK's level of automation that focuses on all the automation that isn't just a robot? I don't think there are any stats other that it's really hard to measure automation, because automation starts from one little machine to, it's not always a robot, is it?
That's very true, and a lot of times the right answer isn't a robot. It can be a simple mechatronics, or it can be for a very small company who's just starting out, it could be a label machine. That might be the right level of automation at that time. It could be a box erector. There's 1,005 different things that we could talk about what the first step could be.
Yeah, ABB did an automation readiness index report maybe 4 or 5 years ago, looking at basically globally which countries are best positioned to automate. And actually the UK finished very high up that table. I think it was 4th or 5th overall. We did that with the Economist, I think, and the reason is we actually have some great underlying supports for that. So you look, for example, at the 3rd level education, the R&D capabilities that exist in country, they're still among the best in the world. I mean, you only have to look at where artificial intelligence research is being done, and a lot of it's in the main UK universities. So actually, there's a lot of positives in that story.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we're dead on 3 o'clock, so we've done very well. Excellent. If I could ask the viewers to us to fill in that little form at the end to see if you've enjoyed this, found it useful, and all the rest. Questions we didn't get to, we're going to try and answer, and they will be on the website, I think. So look out for that. And just to say thank you very much to the panel. You've been excellent. And I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.